The Deltan race screamed for salvation as the Krog Empire slaughtered their way to galactic conquest. Only the humans could save them now. Fornax collapsed into his chair as the comms screen shut off, burying his face in his hands. The horrors he had witnessed replayed in his mind unceasingly. The Deltan fleet, the pride and shield of his people, reduced to floating wreckage. Escape pods mercilessly targeted and destroyed. Krog warships entering orbit above their core worlds, invasions already underway. But worst of all, the broken body of General Zentari, the greatest military mind the Deltans had ever known, displayed like a trophy by the sneering Krog commander. Fornax had seen the numbers. He knew what this defeat meant. The Deltan race, after centuries of war, teetered on the very precipice of total conquest by the Krog. Their fleets were crippled, their armies in retreat on every front, their worlds falling one by one. The next target would undoubtedly be the Deltan homeworld itself. If the Krog took their home system and enslaved their species, it would mean the end of all hope, the end of their very way of life. Morale was non-existent. Fornax's soldiers, once proud warriors, now shambled about like beaten dogs, faces drawn and eyes empty. They all knew the truth. The war was lost. The Krog were too strong, too ruthless. Many spoke in hushed tones of surrender, of salvaging what little they could. But Fornax refused to even consider capitulation to the hated Krog. There was only one option left, only one possible ally who could turn the tide: the humans of Earth. In ages past, the Deltans had watched humanity's rise with cautious optimism. Though primitive and divided, they showed remarkable potential. Now, centuries later, they had spread across the stars and built a formidable interstellar power of their own. Fornax knew the humans all too well. They were a young race, tempestuous and unpredictable. They warred amongst themselves over the pettiest of reasons. But in battle against alien foes, their ferocity and relentless determination were the stuff of legend. Time and time again, the galaxy had seen them snatch victory from the jaws of defeat through sheer tenacity and unconventional tactics. The Deltan leadership had already reached out to the Earth Defense Council, pleading for aid against the Krog menace. Now, as the most senior military commander left alive, it fell to Fornax to meet the humans in person and convince them to commit to the fight. As his shuttle descended through the clouds toward the human capital, Fornax prayed to the ancestors that he could persuade them to intervene. The Deltan race was on its knees, their cities burning and children dying. Without the humans and their war fleets, his people would be eradicated or enslaved. This meeting was their last chance. Fornax stepped out onto the landing pad and laid eyes on the human delegation and the man who led them, Jordan Murray, the grizzled, battle-scarred hero of Earth's space wars. He held the Deltan's fate, the fate of the entire galaxy, in his war-calloused hands. The Krog had to be stopped here and now. The survival of worlds, of entire civilizations, hung on this moment. As Fornax approached the humans, he whispered an ancient battle cry of his people: "Conquer or die." Jordan's grip on Fornax's hand was firm as they stood together, looking out at the joint human-Deltan strike force assembled before them. The weight of the galaxy rested on their shoulders as they prepared to recapture the critical weapons research facility on Antares from the Krog invaders. As they descended toward the planet's surface, the true extent of the Krog's fortifications became apparent. Towering walls bristled with advanced weaponry, while legions of Krog soldiers patrolled the perimeter. Intel reports indicated that the Krog were already working to reverse engineer the stolen Deltan technology within the facility. Aboard the flagship, Jordan gathered his officers around a holographic display of the battlefield. "We need to hit them hard and fast," he said, his voice steady with conviction. "I propose a two-pronged attack, a diversionary frontal assault to draw out their main forces, while a smaller team infiltrates the facility to sabotage it and recover the key tech." Fornax nodded, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "I will handpick my most skilled warriors to join your infiltration team, Jordan. Together, We will strike at the heart of the Krog operation. As the plan was set in motion, the diversionary force engaged the Krog head-on. Explosions lit up the sky as human and Deltan ships clashed with the enemy's defenses. Amidst the chaos, Jordan and Fornax's elite team covertly breached the facility's perimeter. Inside, they fought their way through corridors teeming with Krog guards and technicians. The air sizzled with blaster fire as they pushed deeper into the complex, planting explosives at critical junctures. But their presence did not go unnoticed for long. A hulking Krog commander, his armor adorned with the insignia of high rank, emerged to block their path. With a roar, he unleashed a barrage of fire, forcing the infiltration team to seek cover. Jordan and Fornax found themselves pinned down, engaged in a fierce firefight against overwhelming odds. In the heat of battle, Fornax leaped from cover to draw the commander's fire, buying Jordan a precious opening. But the Krog's aim was true, and Fornax fell, a searing wound in his side. Jordan surged forward, dragging his fallen comrade to safety as the rest of the team laid down, suppressing fire. With Fornax's life hanging in the balance, Jordan knew he had to finish the mission. Gritting his teeth, he pushed onward, planting the final charges and setting the timers. As the explosions began to tear through the facility, Jordan hoisted Fornax over his shoulder and led the team in a daring escape. Outside, the tide of battle had turned. The Krog forces, thrown into disarray by the sabotage, were no match for the reinvigorated human Deltan strike force. Together, they pressed the attack, driving the enemy back and securing a pivotal victory. In the aftermath, as Fornax recovered from his wounds, he and Jordan pored over the intelligence gleaned from the raid. Amidst the data, a disturbing pattern emerged, evidence of a clandestine alliance between the Krog and a mysterious, technologically advanced race known as the Veld. The implications were staggering. Jordan and Fornax knew they had to bring this information to their leaders immediately. The Krog-Veld alliance posed a threat beyond anything they had faced before, and only by exposing it could they hope to rally the galaxy against this growing menace. But the road ahead would be fraught with peril. Light years away in the heart of the Krog Empire, Emperor Malgoth seethed with rage at the news of the defeat on Antares. His eyes fixed upon the kneeling figure of General Zorgath, his most ruthless and cunning strategist. "You will crush this human Deltan alliance," Malgoth snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "I don't care what it takes. Burn their worlds, shatter their fleets, and bring me the heads of their leaders." Zorgath rose, his eyes glinting with malice. "As you command, my emperor. They will learn the true meaning of fear before I am done." As Jordan and Fornax raced to gather allies and strengthen their forces, Zorgath set his own dark plans into motion. The stage was set for a conflict that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy, a war in which the fate of untold billions hung in the balance. Jordan and Fornax stood before the Earth Defense Council and Deltan leadership, the weight of their discovery evident in their grim expressions. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing intercepted communications and intelligence reports that painted a chilling picture of the Krog-Veld alliance. "This changes everything," Jordan said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "The Veld's technological prowess combined with the Krog's military might? It's a recipe for galactic domination." Fornax stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room. "We must act now, before this unholy alliance grows stronger. Every moment we hesitate, they advance their plans." The human and Deltan leaders conferred in hushed tones, the gravity of the situation apparent. Finally, Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Council spoke. "We agree. A joint offensive operation is our only option. We must sever this alliance and cripple their technological advantage." Intelligence operatives quickly identified a prime target, a major Veld research outpost on the remote planet Xyrillion. Jordan and Fornax found themselves at the helm of a massive joint strike force, tasked with infiltrating and destroying the facility. As the Allied Armada approached Xyrillion, the Krog and Veld fleets launched a fierce counterattack. Space around the planet erupted into chaos as energy weapons crisscrossed the void and fighter squadrons engaged in deadly dogfights. Jordan barked orders from the bridge of the flagship. Concentrate fire on their left flank. Don't let them outmaneuver us. Fornax coordinated with the Deltan ships, their unconventional tactics throwing the enemy off balance. Slowly, but surely, the tide of battle began to turn. With a narrow window of opportunity opening, Jordan assembled a team of elite human and Deltan soldiers for a daring boarding operation. Their shuttle weaved through the debris-filled space, dodging enemy fire before crash landing on the outpost's outer hull. "Move! Move! Move!" Jordan shouted as they breached the airlock. The team surged forward, encountering heavy resistance from Veld security forces and Krog troops. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as they fought their way deeper into the facility. Casualties mounted on both sides. A young Deltan soldier fell, crying out in pain. Jordan dragged him to cover, applying a quick med patch before pressing on. They couldn't afford to stop. Finally, they reached the central research complex. As Jordan's team secured the perimeter, he accessed a nearby terminal. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the data. "Holy shit," he muttered. "They're developing some kind of molecular disruptor. This thing could tear apart entire ships, even cities." "We need to get this data," one of the human soldiers said. "It could be the key to countering their tech." Jordan nodded grimly. "Agreed. Download everything you can. We're not leaving without it." As they worked to secure the research, Fornax led the remaining Allied forces in an all-out assault on the outpost's power generators. He piloted a small craft loaded with high-yield explosives, weaving through enemy fire. "This is for the Deltan people," Fornax whispered as he aimed his craft directly at the main generator. The resulting explosion rocked the entire facility, triggering a catastrophic overload. Alarms blared throughout the outpost as systems began to fail. Jordan's team fought their way back to their entry point, the precious data secured. They barely made it to their escape shuttles as the facility began to tear itself apart. From the safety of the Allied fleet, Jordan and Fornax watched as the Veld outpost was consumed in a massive explosion. A cheer went up from the human and Deltan forces. They had struck a significant blow against their enemies. But their celebration was short-lived. A priority transmission came through, and Jordan's face fell as he listened. "Krog reinforcements," he said, turning to Fornax. "Led by General Zorgath himself. They'll be here soon, and they're out for blood." Fornax's expression hardened. "Then we must be ready. We've dealt them a serious blow today, but this war is just getting started." Jordan nodded, his mind already racing with potential strategies. "We need to completely sever the Krog-Veld alliance. It's the only way to ensure our survival." As the Allied fleet regrouped and tended to their wounded, Jordan and Fornax huddled over star charts and intelligence reports. They knew the next battle would be even more brutal, with the fate of the galactic realm hanging in the balance. But for now, they had hope, and the dedication to see this fight through to the bitter end. Jordan and Fornax huddled over the tactical display, their faces illuminated by the holographic star map. The blinking red dots of Krog reinforcements crept ever closer. "We're out of time," Jordan said, his voice taut with urgency. "If we don't act now, Zorgath will overwhelm us." Fornax nodded, his eyes narrowing. "We must strike at the heart of their alliance, the Veld homeworld." They pored over the data stolen from Xerillion, decrypting coordinates and analyzing defensive capabilities. As the planet Zeltrax came into focus, Jordan began handpicking his team. "Ramirez, Chen, Kowalski, you're with me," he barked. Fornax selected his own warriors, each a master of stealth and combat. The sleek human stealth vessel slipped silently through space, its adaptive hull blending seamlessly with the void. Inside, the strike team ran final equipment checks. Jordan hefted his pulse rifle, the weight familiar and reassuring. "Krog patrol incoming!" The pilot's voice crackled over the comm. "Initiating evasive maneuvers!" The ship banked hard, narrowly avoiding detection. Similar close calls followed, as they penetrated deeper into enemy territory. Finally, Zeltrax loomed before them. The ship shuddered as it hit the atmosphere, plasma flickering across the viewports. With a bone-jarring impact, they touched down in a secluded area of the sprawling Veld capital. Fornax took point as they exited the ship, his intimate knowledge of Veld architecture and culture proving invaluable. He gestured silently, leading them through winding alleys and shadowed corridors. "Security checkpoint ahead," he whispered. "Follow my lead." With practiced ease, the team blended into a group of Veld laborers, slipping past the guards unnoticed. They repeated this dance of stealth and misdirection, inching closer to the central governmental complex. Suddenly, alarms blared. They'd been made. "So much for the subtle approach," Jordan growled, unslinging his weapon. "Take them down, fast and quiet." The team exploded into action. Fornax's energy blade sliced through Veld guards with surgical precision. Jordan's rifle barked, each shot finding its mark. They fought their way through the streets, leaving a trail of stunned and incapacitated foes in their wake. The governmental complex loomed before them, its defenses formidable. Jordan signaled and the team fanned out. They breached the outer perimeter in a coordinated assault, overwhelming the shocked defenders. Floor by floor, they fought their way up. Jordan and Fornax moved in perfect sync, covering each other's blind spots and exploiting openings. At last, they reached the command center. The doors blew inward and the strike team surged through the breach. In seconds, they had the room secured. The Veld Prime Minister stood before them, defiant despite the weapons trained on him. "You will gain nothing here," he snarled. "Our alliance with the Krog is unbreakable." Fornax's eyes flashed with rage. He raised his blade, ready to end the Prime Minister's life. But Jordan's hand shot out, staying his friend's arm. "Wait," Jordan said, an idea forming. He turned to the Prime Minister. "You're so certain of your superiority? Then let's settle this the old-fashioned way. Your best warrior against me. If I win, you break the alliance. If I lose, we leave, and you can continue your foolish pact." The Prime Minister's advisors protested, but he silenced them with a gesture. "You would risk everything on single combat? Very well, human. I accept." What followed was a spectacle unlike any Zeltrax had seen. In the central arena, broadcast across the planet, Jordan faced off against the Veld's mightiest champion. The alien warrior was a mountain of muscle and carapace, armed with wicked segmented blades. Jordan circled warily, searching for weaknesses. The Veld struck first, its blades whistling through the air. Jordan ducked and rolled, feeling the wind of the near miss. He responded with a flurry of blows, probing the Veld's defenses. The fight dragged on, a brutal test of skill and endurance. Jordan's muscles burned, his breath coming in ragged gasps, but he pressed on, wearing down his larger opponent. In a final audacious attempt, Jordan feinted left, then dove right. He slipped inside the Veld's guard and struck a devastating series of blows. The alien champion toppled, defeated. Silence fell over the arena. Then, grudgingly, the Prime Minister spoke. "You have won, human. As agreed, the Veld-Krog alliance is no more." The ripples of this victory spread quickly. Across the sector, Krog forces found themselves suddenly without their technological edge. Entire fleets turned tail and fled, no longer able to stand against the human-Deltan alliance. On his flagship, General Zorgath received the news with cold fury. His invasion plans lay in tatters, but as he ordered a full retreat, his eyes gleamed with malevolent dedication. This setback would not be the end. Jordan and Fornax, battered but triumphant, made their way back to their own lines. They knew the Krog would not give up so easily, but for now, they had struck a critical blow. The real war was just beginning. The dissolution of the Krog-Veld alliance presented a fleeting window of opportunity. Jordan Murray stood on the bridge of the human flagship, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showcasing the full might of the combined human and Deltan fleets. Thousands of ships, from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts, stretched as far as the eye could see. "This is our chance," Jordan said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We strike now before they can regroup. Fornax nodded, his alien features set with fierce grit. Agreed. The Krog homeworld of Trogaria awaits. The order went out, and the massive armada surged forward, engines flaring as they set course for the heart of Krog territory. For days, they pushed deeper into enemy space, encountering only token resistance from scattered Krog patrols. As they neared Trogarian space, alarms blared across the fleet. Sensors lit up with countless hostile signatures. Incoming Krog forces, a tactical officer shouted. They're deploying in a defensive formation. Jordan leaned forward, studying the enemy's tactics. General Zorgath, he muttered. He's making his stand here. The space between the fleets erupted in a storm of energy, weapons, and missiles. Fighters clashed in furious dogfights while capital ships exchanged devastating broadsides. Jordan coordinated the assault, directing fire and plugging gaps in their formation. Suddenly, reports flooded in from the front lines. Allied soldiers were turning on their comrades, their bodies twisted into grotesque, hulking forms. What the hell is happening out there? Jordan demanded. A shaken voice came over the comm. Some kind of bioweapon, sir. It's turning our people into monsters. Jordan watched in horror as entire squads of Allied troops succumbed to the Krog's insidious weapon. The infected soldiers attacked with mindless ferocity, tearing through armor and flesh alike. We need to contain this, Jordan ordered. Quarantine any affected areas immediately. But the bioweapon spread rapidly. Jordan found himself on the front lines, pulse rifle in hand, facing down soldiers he had once commanded. Their faces were contorted in rage, eyes vacant of any human intelligence. I'm sorry, Jordan whispered as he pulled the trigger. Again and again, he was forced to end the lives of those who had trusted him with their lives. The battle raged for hours, with the Allied forces taking staggering losses. Yet slowly, inexorably, they pushed through the Krog defenses. Jordan returned to the bridge, his armor stained with blood and worse. Status report, he demanded, his voice hoarse. We've broken through their outer defenses, sir. Trogaria is in sight. Jordan stared at the Krog homeworld, a blue-green orb suspended in the void. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. Commence orbital bombardment. Target their capital and military installations. The order went out, and the Allied fleet unleashed hell. From orbit, they watched as the surface of Trogaria erupted in flames. The Krog capital, a sprawling metropolis of alien architecture, crumbled under the relentless barrage. On the bridge of his flagship, General Zorgath watched impassively as his world burned. Reports of civilian casualties in the millions poured in, yet he made no move to surrender. Just as victory seemed within reach, a new threat emerged. Massive disruptor arrays, hidden across Trogaria's surface, powered up and opened fire. Allied ships disintegrated under the onslaught, their hulls torn apart at the molecular level. Fornax! Jordan shouted over the chaos. We need those arrays taken out. The Deltan warrior nodded grimly. I'll lead a team to the surface. We'll end this. Jordan watched as Fornax's infiltration team descended to the ravaged planet below. For agonizing hours, he coordinated the space battle while waiting for news from the ground team. Finally, Fornax's voice crackled over the comm. We've reached the final array, he reported, his voice strained. But there's no way to disable it remotely. Someone has to stay behind. Jordan's heart sank. Fornax, no. It's the only way, old friend, Fornax interrupted. It's been an honor. The communication cut off. Moments later, the final disruptor array exploded in a brilliant flash. Jordan closed his eyes, honoring his friend's sacrifice. With the disruptors neutralized, the Allied fleet ceased their bombardment. An eerie silence fell over the battlefield as both sides realized the fight was over. But General Zorgath had one final move. Jordan watched in growing horror as Krog ships across the galaxy began to self-destruct, unleashing devastating bioweapons on their own populations. What are they doing? Someone on the bridge cried out. Jordan's face paled as he realized the full extent of Zorgath's madness. They're ensuring no one can claim their empire. It's genocide on an unimaginable scale. Powerless to stop the slaughter, Jordan could only watch as entire Krog worlds were consumed by the Scorched Empire Protocol. The magnitude of the devastation was beyond comprehension. In the aftermath, Jordan stood on the ash-covered surface of Tragaria. The once proud Krog capital was now a wasteland. Allied forces worked tirelessly to save what few pockets of Krog civilization remained, but the damage was catastrophic. As a somber memorial was erected to honor the fallen, including Fornax, Jordan felt the weight of his new responsibility settle on his shoulders. Humanity and its allies were now the protectors of a scarred galaxy. Jordan gazed out at the ruined landscape, his voice barely above a whisper. Never again, I swear it.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.